Welcome to the Rental Licensing Inspection Lunch and Learn webinar series. This series is being presented by the Neighborhood Services team with the Planning and Code Administration Department. What we're going to do is we're going to walk you through an inspection room by room. We're going to just give you different aspects of a residential property. And this is not a full comprehensive review of an inspection. This is just covering the most common types of items we come across while conducting a rental inspection. Do not use this webinar as a checklist. This webinar is really only advisory, and it's up to each property owner to make sure you're compliant with all the applicable codes in the city of Hagerstown. For the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through what an inspector is examining while they're conducting a rental inspection. This way, you can better understand what the staff are inspecting while we're walking through a room. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to open this up to any questions that you may have. To ask those questions, you can always just tap or click on the Q&A button that you see either at the bottom or the top of your screen and submit your question that way. Today, we're going to walk through a bedroom. Today, our inspector is going to be Justin Cole, and Justin's going to be walking us through the bedroom here, explaining what items we're looking for. Justin is certified as a property maintenance inspector in an International Code Council. Justin?
Hi guys. First thing we do when we walk into a bedroom is you're just going to take a look around the actual room itself. Look at the walls, the ceilings. You want to make sure there's no visible damage. Damage such as holes in the wall, see water stains on the ceilings from a leak. Make sure there's no cracks, chipping, peeling paint. All those would have to be addressed before occupancy of a tenant in there, and all of them have to be complete in a workmanlike manner, just showing instead of just putting there being a hole in the wall, just putting some spackle and stuff over it and calling it a day. You'd actually have to sand it down, paint it, and finish it like any other repair would be needed. The next thing we would go look for is the windows. The windows itself needs to be operational, meaning you need to open, stay open. So if a window, you pop it open, that wouldn't pass. There's a few options you could do to remedy that. One of the simplest and popular ones in this town is putting barrel bolts on the windows themselves. You need to have one on both sides for it to be acceptable. The window itself will need to fit properly into the frame. It will need to be weather tight. The locking devices on the window needs to be secured and it needs to be functional. So that means if your windows aren't lining up or anything, there just needs to be some adjustments made to it. The pane itself needs to be intact. If there is any large cracks in there, the window does have to be repaired. Some cracks can be repaired without replacing the whole thing. There's tiny little cracks typically like in the corner, less than maybe a few inches long. The glazing itself will need to be intact to where the window is not moving around in the frame and is also weather tight. The window frame itself will need to be in good condition, meaning no signs of deterioration, water damage from water getting in. Same thing, no chipping, peeling, paint, anything like that. All those would need to be taken care of prior to inspection. The bedroom itself will need to have a means of escape for the property. That meaning, in case of a fire, you're not going to try to beeline out of the bedroom, down the steps and out the door. Typically for a bedroom, it would be the windows itself would be your escape options for firefighters to come get you or you to get out of the building. The windows need to meet a measurement of 5.7 square feet to be able to be your escape window there. Next thing we'd go look for is we'd check out the door to the actual room. The door itself needs to be functioning, meaning when you go close it, it latches closed. It needs to be able to latch and shut close with reasonable force, meaning you're not going to throw your shoulder into it to get it closed and then have trouble trying to open it back up. The door needs to fit properly in its frame. All the hardware needs to be correct and fully installed. The lock itself, if you do have a lock on your bedroom doorknob, the lock needs to be installed to not present a hazard where the person that's in the bedroom will be locked in the bedroom itself. So if you're going to install a doorknob with a lock, the locking mechanism needs to be on the inside of the room so the person inside the room can choose if the door is locked or not. Every room needs to have a light in it. So in the bedroom, typically you'll have a ceiling light. There's two options with lights. You can have a ceiling light or you can have a receptacle controlled switch, receptacle controlled by a switch. If you have if you have a ceiling mounted light, the globe itself needs to be intact. Meaning can't have any breaks in it. It needs to be needs to be fully installed up there, and also you do need to have your light bulbs in when we do come for inspection, just so the fact we could flip on the light to make sure the ceiling light is functioning in itself. If you're going to use a receptacle controlled by a switch, what goes on with those is you need to make sure the receptacle itself is installed properly, make sure it's in the wall and in the box firmly and secured. Make sure the outlet itself is free from obstructions, make sure nothing's broken off in the ground, or make sure that the outlet itself is wired properly, make sure it's grounded, and then make sure it's free of any damages such as burn marks from arcing, melting. Make sure it's not covered in paint from when in between tenant turnovers. That takes us into when we do go through and we look at the electrical stuff in the room, such as the outlets. Every room is required to have 2 outlets at least, and those 2 outlets have to be separate and remote from each other. So that meaning separate and remote, you can't have one outlet right here and then on the adjacent wall have one 1.5 feet, 2 feet away. That does not meet the requirement or definition of separate and remote. Ideally, what we're looking for is if you have one outlet over here, you can have one on the opposite side room on another wall. After those 2 outlets, you can install as many as you want out throughout the property. The outlets itself, again, need to be in good condition, wired correctly. Any reverse polarity needs to be addressed by an electrician, but if they are burned, have melted evidence on it, or if they painted over, they can be replaced without a permit for a like device. The face plates on them all too need to be intact. So if you got a broken face plate, you gotta swap one out to put it on there. Every room in the building needs to also have a source of heat. For this room, it is a heat vent from a furnace. Some other rooms will have a baseboard heat. With any of that heat, it does need to be able to heat the room to a minimum of 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, with those heat sources, one good thing to keep in mind is you don't want to make sure they're not being obstructed by anything. So your baseboard heats, your vents for your heat ducts, they need to be clear of debris, furniture. They need to be able to have their airflow and their opportunity to get into the space itself. Now, with the baseboard heats, you do need to consult with your electrician to make sure you have the right amount of baseboards in there. You could be under or over depending on the size of the room, but your electrician would know how to handle that one. Now, when we do come into the property, we do expect that it does need to be move-in ready. Move-in ready is meaning that to your best ability, you've gone through the property, you've gone through the bedroom itself, and you addressed all the violations that you can see. When you come in there, we do want to see it clean. We understand it's not going to be spotless, but the idea is someone could theoretically come in right behind us after we do our inspection. But with that meaning, if there's carpet on the floor, we want to make sure it's clean. No stains, no rips, nothing along that. On the walls, make sure the walls are clean from previous tenants. So there's no spills or such on the walls. If there's a hardwood flooring in the rooms, you want to make sure it is smooth and they have no broken wood surfaces where it can make a hazard to someone walking barefoot on the rooms. And then one of the last things we look for is make sure there's no signs of infestation in the room and the property. Infestations such as mice, roaches, any sort of types of bugs. If we do see some of that, that does have to be addressed. Typically, exterminator is the best option for that, to have them come in and address the situation and to be able to handle it for the property owner. So when we do come in for these inspections, first thing we do, we come in, we take a general look at the room, looking at the surfaces of the walls and the ceilings. We get to the windows, we get to the lighting situation, we look at the heating situation, make sure that meets requirements, look at the electrical equipment, devices, and then the whole overall cleanliness of it. So that is just a quick recap of what we're doing, and here's Paul.
All right, thank you, Justin, for walking us through the bedroom here. Now, Justin did not cover every aspect of the conditions we could come across in a bedroom. Hagerstown's very unique. Each structure is different, so we just kind of gave you some of the high points that we could come across while conducting an inspection. If you have any specific questions related to your property, you can always email us at codecompliance@hagerstownmd.org to ask those questions. Right now, we'll open things up to any general questions that we may have. So you can just tap or click on that Q&A and type your question in. I have a couple for Justin here that we kind of come across that we get frequently asked. So Justin, in this room here, you can see a closet. And is a closet required to be a bedroom in Hagerstown?
No, the city does not require there to be a closet in a bedroom. If there's a closet, obviously it needs to meet the same standards as the rest of the building would need to, general maintenance standards. So if there's a door in the closet, make sure it's functioning. All the hardware is installed properly. The door's going to open and close correctly. And then inside the closet itself, it's the same thing. We're going to look at the walls, make sure there's no cracks, stains, any damages to the walls. Some closets might have a light in them. You have to make sure that light is also meeting code on the location of it and the distance from where clothes or such can be stored in there. So it's not required, but if it is there, it does have to meet the general maintenance requirements for the town city.
So there's other requirements for a closet as well for lights and stuff. All right, so what about, we get a lot of requests sometimes of how many people can sleep in this house? And a lot of times the bedroom can dictate that type of stuff. What are the square footage requirements for bedrooms for occupancy?
Square footage requirements for a bedroom is these. If it's one person, it's 70 square feet. 2 people is 100. 3 people is 150 square feet. And then for every person after 3 people, you add an additional 50 square feet. So 4 people would be 200. 5 people would be 250 and such on as you go up the scale.
All right, great. And then also like you mentioned with the square footage stuff there are other requirements too, like for living rooms and dining rooms. They kind of dictate the sizes of things here, which we hope to cover later on in something later in a similar fashion to this. Don't really have any other questions here about bedrooms. One question that we did get come in though is about seeing other versions of the webinars that we've done. They will be available later. That we are recording these and they'll be on YouTube, and we'll provide links later for those types of ones for people that want to view. Like we said, our goal is always try to keep this between 10 and 15 minutes, and so we're pretty much there. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for being part of this webinar series here. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can search for PCAD Hagerstown. That's PCAD Hagerstown, and you can type that in and search and follow us from any of those platforms. And again, thank you all for being part of this series, and there will be an email going out later today for next week's that will be featuring the attic space and an uninhabitable attic space. So please be sure to sign up for that one when the email invite goes out later today. Thank you.